بسم الله الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه ثم أما بعد. To proceed, inshallah, today we will have Babu Thiqa, the chapter on trust or the station of trust. In the first session on Tazkiyah or Tasawwuf, and the second session, which will be on fiqh, we will try to finish Babu al-Imama, the chapter on Imama, leading the prayer, and we will also try to finish Babu Salat al-Marid, or the chapter on the prayer of the sick. So let's start with Babu Thiqa. Imam al-Harawi rahimahullah ta'ala said here in the station of trust, or the chapter on trust, قال الله عز وجل فإذا خفت عليه فألقيه في اليم. Allah Almighty said, when you fear for him, cast him into the river. Allah Almighty said, when you fear for him, cast him into the river. Bab As-Thiqa, which is the chapter on trust. Imam al-Harawi will come back later and define As-Thiqa. Usually starts with an ayah from the Quran, and then he gives the definition, and then he gives the classification or the levels of this station. So maybe before we address this ayah, let us go over his definition or his description of a thiqa. It's not necessarily a definition, but it is basically a description of the importance, the value of the station of thiqa. He considers thiqa to be the spirit, the soul of the stations, of the other stations of tawakkul and tafweed and taslim, of reliance, delegation, and surrender. All of them, this is the fountain from which they flow. Is that expected or not? To have trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to trust Allah. How could you rely on Him without trusting Him? How could you surrender to Him without trusting Him? How could you delegate to Him without trusting Him? Azza wa Jal, exalted is He. So he says, الثقة سواد عين التوكل. And these will be different wordings, but they pretty much mean the same thing ultimately. It is about their importance. They are the core, the essence of the other stations. So he says, الثقة سواد عين التوكل. Trust is the essence of tawakkul, or reliance. Sawad ayn means the black part of the eye, the pupil of the eye. If you imagine tawakkul to be like an eye, the dark part or the black part in the middle is considered the most important part of the eye, because it has been traditionally considered the most important part of the eye. They give it a lot of importance. Anyway, we know that the pupil is in the middle of this black part, and the rays of light go through the pupil to your retina. It's a different discussion. But الثقة سواد عين التوكل. الثقة is the essence of tawakkul. He says, وَنُقْطَةُ دَائِرَةِ التَّفْوِيد. I translated نقطة دائرة التفويض to be the center of tafweed, and the center of tafweed or delegation. Da'ira is the center. نقطة الدائرة is the dot in the middle of the center. نقطة is the dot. Da'ira is the center, is the circle. So the نقطة دائرة التفويض is the dot in the middle of the circle of tafweed. وسويداء قلب التسليم, and the innermost core of taslim. Suwaida al-qalb is also the innermost part of the heart. So it is the innermost part of taslim. In other words, this is the spirit, the essence, the core of these different stations. Without thiqa, without having trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you will never be able to reside in any of those stations. You will never be able even to visit them without trusting in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with your entirety, with all your heart. So going back to the ayah that the Sheikh selected in the beginning, he selected an ayah from Surah Al-Qasas about the mother of Musa alayhi salam. When she feared for him, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told her, when Fir'aun gave that decree that every male newborn of Bani Israel will be slaughtered or exterminated, killed. Musa heard of this, and she was afraid. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave her a command through revelation. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, فَإِذَا خِفْتِ عَلَيْهِ فَأَلْقِيهِ فِي الْيَمِّ وَلَا تَخَافِي وَلَا تَحْزَنِي إِنَّا رَادُّوهُ إِلَيْكِ وَجَعَلُوهُ مِنَ الْمُرْسَلِينَ. So Allah Almighty said, when you fear for him, cast him into the river. When you fear for him, cast him into the river, and don't have any fear or any grief. We will bring him back to you, and we will make him of our messengers. So that requires a great deal of trust. He's telling her, you're afraid for your son, cast him into the river and leave him and walk away. This is your newborn son. And without trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, she could never do this. Now it is important to say here that she was receiving a revelation, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran clearly, وَأَوْحَيْنَا إِلَىٰ أُمِّ مُوسَى, and we have revealed to Musa, to the mother of Musa. Something of this nature would not apply to us, because the most that we could receive from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is what? Inspiration, ilham. And ilham, as we said before, we said ilham, which is inspiration, the inspiration of the heart. We said dhawq, which is basically that intuitive perception. These two concepts do not have the power to negate any part of the Sharia. You see قصة al-Khadr with Musa, the story of al-Khadr with Musa in Surah Al-Kahf, where al-Khadr killed that boy and made a hole, punched a hole in the ship, and he's receiving a revelation. Now, if you have someone do this, and nowadays, if you have someone do this, and they go to jail for this. And then if you claim to be hearing any voices or anything, you will be examined to make sure that you're mentally competent. And if you're mentally competent, you'll still go to jail. There is a huge difference between revelation, wahi, and inspiration, ilham. Inspiration and zawq, ilham and zawq do exist. People need ilham and zawq. Because there is something, as we said before, beyond knowledge. There is something beyond information, gathering information, harboring or hoarding information, collecting information, being informed intellectually, to make you actually pious, to make you actually make the right decisions in the different circumstances, in the different contexts, and make the decision that is most pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You do need the guidance of the heart, and you do need that intuition to make the right decision. Yet ilham and zawq never circumvent the Sharia, never circumvent the law. They complement the law. They never substitute, they never circumvent. And that's the difference between wahy and ilham and zawq. In wahy, you could receive commands from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to do things like al-Khadr did. You could receive commands from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to do things like Musa did. To throw her son or to cast her son into the river. Is that clear? That is very clear. And President Obama was in one of his speeches was talking about how Ibrahim was commanded to slaughter his son, and if we see someone doing this nowadays, we report them to the police. Yes, he was talking about how religion should be to some extent sidelined from public policy, that public policy has nothing to do with religion. The example that he was giving, the simple answer to this is, yes, absolutely right. If you see someone trying to slaughter his son nowadays. You stop them, you report them to the police. But there is a difference between someone who is receiving revelation and someone who is not. We don't have anyone receiving revelation nowadays. The Prophet ﷺ was the seal of the prophets. Anyone who claims to be receiving revelation would be a liar. Those prophets, however, did prove that they were actually receiving revelation from God through multitudes of miracles. They proved to their people that they were receiving revelation from God. So it was not hard for the people to believe them, to believe that they are actually receiving revelation. And those who refuse to believe true prophets of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, true messengers of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they rejected them out of arrogance and stubbornness. Then Imam al-Harawi will carry on to address the different levels of thiqah or trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He will say, وَهِيَ عَلَى ثَلَاثِ دَرَجَاتٍ. It is 3 levels, as usual. He says, الدرجة الأولى درجة الإياس وهو إياس العبد من مقاومات الأحكام. يرحمكم الله. الدرجة الأولى درجة الإياس. The first level is the level of despair. وهي إياس العبد من مقاومات الأحكام. And it is the servant's despair of fighting off the decrees. You lose hope that you can actually fight off the decrees. At one point, you understand that you cannot fight off the decrees. Do we need to repeat that there is still free choice working within the overall supreme will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and subservient to it? And we had gone over this several times before, so we probably don't need to repeat it in detail. But he's saying that at one point you figure out that what has been inscribed in the preserved tablet will come to pass. And that will not stop you from making the right decisions, making the provisions, taking the precautions, doing your part, engaging the causes. That will not stop you. But here is what it will do to you. He says, number 1, thereby abstaining from fighting over the shares of others. So you will lose hope that you'll be able to fight off the decrees of Allah. So you will abstain from fighting over the shares. ليقعد عن منازعة الأقسام. الأقسام means the shares. Munaza'a, it is the fight over the shares. Meaning here fighting over the shares of others. Like you do not compete with others. You compete in parallel lines. You don't fight with them over the dunya. Because the dunya has the shares in this dunya, provisions, everything has been divided already. So you try to basically compete with your own potential. Try to excel to meet your potential. That is what you're trying to do. So you're trying to excel at work to get a promotion. But you're not trying to put people down. You're not trying to basically hurt others. Or trip them so that they fall and then you could make it before them. No, you are competing with your own potentials in parallel lines. You're doing your best. You are Umar. You're wishing the best for Abu Bakr, but you're wishing also to basically. At one point, Umar gave up, but he was wishing to compete and to basically beat Abu Bakr to certain virtues, but without with complete goodwill in his heart for Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu. And that's the point here. So you're competing with your potential in parallel lines. You're not fighting over the shares or al-aqsam because you know that all of this is predetermined. So ليقعد عن منازعة الأقسام, to stop and refrain from fighting over the shares that belong to others. ليتخلص من قحة الإقدام. to get rid of and abstaining from the fighting over the shares of others, and the rudeness of audaciousness, and to get rid of the rudeness of audaciousness. Audaciousness here is to rush Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when you make dua, for instance, or to be demanding. When you make dua and then the response is delayed, some people can become demanding, and some people can become even just like harsh with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Wallahi, I heard someone who used to work not a very good job in Egypt. Like it's a job that will require a lot of basically tyranny, and just like. But he felt that despite the fact that his job was not particularly the best job, particularly during that time, he was saying his son failed in high school, and I heard him say, I've been praying for this many years, and you made my son fail in high school. Wallahi, I'm not praying from here on. So it's just like, this is not the audaciousness that Imam al-Harawi is talking about. Imam al-Harawi would have never imagined this level of audaciousness. He's talking about the audaciousness of someone who's rushing Allah, who's who's getting impatient. I made dua and I am not, getting a response, or getting audaciousness also in other regards. In general, when you make haste, you are being audacious with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Haste is basically to circumvent the rules and the etiquettes that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala instructed us in, certain rules and etiquettes. It's not just about rules. There are also etiquettes that we have to live by. There are also Islamic ethics that we have to live by in addition to the rules. And the people who want the bare bones, they will likely violate those bounds of Allah, will violate the bounds of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the buffer zone, the ethics, the etiquettes. We will have to preserve them in order for us to not trespass the bounds of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or violate maharim Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. A large cushion of those ethics and etiquettes. If your haste makes you violate those rules and ethics, that is qihat al-iqdam, or the rudeness of audaciousness. Then Imam al-Harawi says, darajatu thaniya darajatu al-amn. So the first one is despair. You will have to really know that what has been decreed will come to pass. So you're not being hasty and you're not being audacious with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. At Daraja Thaniya, after this despair, you will have security. You will have to go through the despair before you reach the level of security. You will have to go through the despair before you reach the level of security. الدرجة الثانية درجة الأمن. The second level is the level of security. وهو أمن العبد من فوت المقدور وانتقاد المستور. وهو أمن العبد من فوت المقدور. That is for the abd, for the servant, to cease fearing from missing what has been decreed or what is decreed. فوت المقدور. وانتقاد or وانتقاص المستور. Or the change of that which has been inscribed, the change of that which has been inscribed, or the decrease of that which has been inscribed. So after you despair of the muqawamat al-ahkam, fighting off the decrees, then your surrender to the decrees. Which decrees? That befall you. How do you surrender to the future decrees if you don't know the future decrees? You don't surrender to future decrees because you don't know them yet. People who surrender to future decrees are saying that we have access. No, you don't have access. We have access to the preserved tablet. We know. You don't know. So when you fight off the decrees, as Umar radiallahu anhu said, when Umar said that nunazi al-qadar bil-qadar, that we're fighting off al-qadar by qadar, he's talking about future decrees. He's not talking about decrees that have befallen us already. You fight off the decrees that had befallen you, not in the sense of returning them. You can't return them. In mitigating their effects, but their effects, their after effects, are decrees that are in the future also, right? So when a disease befalls you and you try to fight it off, what are you fighting now? Are you fighting what happened? You're fighting the after effects. What may happen? You're trying to mitigate the harms of this as much as you can. That is future decrees or past decrees. Future decrees, do you know them? Do you know what will be the course of this disease in your body? If someone was diagnosed with cancer, does this person have access to the preserved tablet to know that they will only survive 3 years, 5 years, 7 years, 2 years? Does the best of doctors, oncologists, have the ability to forecast, how long this person will live exactly? Absolutely not. Right? Absolutely not. We have come to learn this. But yes, the doctors may say it is very unlikely for this person to live beyond 6 months. And most of the time, they will be right, but not all the time. And they can't tell exactly how long the person will live. They can basically predict, and the prediction may be, close to accurate, but at the end of the day, it is not. They will not be able to tell what will happen in the future. So when you're fighting off the decrees, the future decrees, that is not fighting off the decrees that the Sheikh is talking about. And then keep in mind that you know that you will not be able to resist future decrees that have been actually inscribed in the preserved tablet, which gives you this sakina, this peace. You're doing your best now because you don't know them. But you're saying to yourself, I am doing my best, but at the end of the day, what is actually written will come to pass. I think if we have a good understanding of al-qadar, we will never be fatalists, and we will have peace without having indifference. We will have peace, we will have stability. It will even give you courage, and it should also give you energy. It should also give you energy and courage, without, an anxiety. Okay, so he said that the second level is the level of security. Now that you have despair of fighting off the decrees, then you will have security, peace of mind, tranquility. فيظفر بروح الرضا, or فيظفر بروح الرضا. فيظفر would be better. So you should probably change the tashkil here. فيظفر بروح الرضا, gaining the delight of contentment. وإلا فبعين اليقين, and if he does not gain the light of contentment, روح means relief. But he will come back and talk about lutf al-sabr, so I saved the word relief for lutf al-sabr, because rawh means a little bit more than relief. Rawh is, comfort with some pleasure. Rawh is comfort with some pleasure. So that's why I use the light here with rawh al-rida. The light may be a little bit more, but we're talking about comfort with pleasure. It's like pleasant comfort, the pleasant comfort of contentment. Pleasant comfort of contentment, maybe rawh al-rida. So that is the highest level. The rida is the highest level here that you could attain, and that is basically when you are completely at ease with the decrees of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And not only at ease, you're also pleased with the decrees of Allah. You remember when we talked about Ibn Umar, when his son died and he was smiling and laughing. We said that this is not the best example because the Prophet's example is the best example. He was weeping when his son died because he was able to basically combine between the stations of mercy and the rida, acceptance, or of the decrees of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and pleasure with the decrees of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, contentment with the decrees of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But Abdullah ibn Umar sort of, was not able to master that reconciliation of the two stations as beautifully as the Prophet ﷺ did. So he decided, to hold on to the station of rida, despite the fact that he did certainly have, he was compassionate towards his son and he loved his son and so on. But since he was not able to reconcile them at that moment, he held on to the station of rida. And the station of rida is a beautiful station, but it is not easy. It is not easy for someone to do like Abdullah ibn Umar. And whatever the Prophet ﷺ did is certainly the hardest. It is the simplest and hardest at the same time. But this is really not easy, particularly at the time of the first shock. But if one would not be able to get to that pleasant comfort of contentment, then at least وَإِلَّا فَبِعَيْنِ الْيَقِينِ, the certainty of vision. عَيْنِ الْيَقِينِ, certainty of vision. It means the, yaqeen, to have certainty, like the certainty of an eyewitness. Like the certainty of an eyewitness who actually saw with his own eyes. So the certainty the eyewitness has in that which he sighted with his own eyes, that is what the believer will have. Qadr is the essence of Iman Billah Azza wa Jal. If someone, as Abdullah ibn Abbas said, that is the thread that connects the pearls of Iman. Nizam al-Iman. It is basically the thread that connects the pearls of Iman is Qadr. If someone is unable to get this down right and to have acceptance of Qadr and to have surrender to Qadr, like I said, without indifference, then this person will have issues with his Iman. You come across people who have doubts or skeptics or people who have difficulties with their Iman. I think the problem of evil is one of the biggest issues that cause them trouble or doubts. So it is clear, like Abdullah ibn Abbas said, if you don't get this down right, you will have difficulty with your Iman. So the Sheikh here is saying that people who will surrender to Qadr are the people who will have the greatest level of certainty, that is the certainty of an eyewitness. He said, the least, if you don't gain this, attain this level, then the least that you could attain is, he said, وَإِلَّا فَبِلُطْفِ الصَّبْرِ, at least the relief of patience. At least you will enjoy the relief of patience. You'll be able to outpatient whatever befalls you, calamities, hardships, the distress that befalls you. You will be able to survive them. We're not talking about someone who's content and laughing and smiling like Abdullah ibn Umar. We're talking about someone who will survive. He will outpatient the turmoil that he goes through. And he will be able to get some relief from that patience. Some relief from that patience. He will not basically collapse and just completely crumble. Then the Sheikh talked about the third level, al-Madaarij As-Saalikeen, and I'm trying to run a little bit fast. To get, triumphs with the pleasant comfort of contentment is a good translation for فَيَظْفَرْ بِرُوحِ الرِّضَى. because I have a lot in the fiqh session to cover. And we will come back and talk about this very concept again and again, inshallah. It doesn't end. We will talk about taslim in the next station, which is station number 31st, when we come back from our 2 weeks off. The next station will be the station of taslim, the station of surrender. And we will repeat some of this when we talk about the station of taslim or surrender. Then he said الدرجة الثالثة معاينة أزلية الحق ليتخلص من محن القصود وتكاليف الحمايات والتعريج على مدارج الوسائل. So الدرجة الثالثة معاينة أزلية الحق ليتخلص من. The third level is beholding the azaliyya, the eternity without beginning. It's pre-eternity, sometimes translated as pre-eternity. I have not seen a good word for azaliyya. Abadiyya is eternity. When people think of eternity, people think of abadiyya, basically eternity without end, right? But azaliyya, it is eternity without beginning. Allah being al-awwal, laysa qablahu shay, the first without anything being before him, and the first without a beginning, which is the hardest thing for human intellect to imagine, because we are basically temporal creations. The idea of eternity itself is beyond our imagination because it's beyond our reality. So this azaliyya, this eternity without beginning, this al-awwaliyya or al-azaliyya. Al-awwaliyya and al-azaliyya, they're the same, but they have different. Awwaliyya means primacy. But azaliyya means eternity without beginning. When it comes to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, al-awwaliyya is like al-azaliyya because He is al-awwal bila ibtida. So He is the first without a beginning. And some of the manuscripts of this book, Manazil As-Saa'ireen, had mu'ayyanat awwaliyyat al-haq, basic versus azaliyyat al-haq. There is not much difference. Primacy or eternity without beginning. So when you go back and he wants you to go back. This is the third level. Sheikh al-Harawi always in the third level, he wants you to he wants your ego to pass away, and he wants you to go back and back and back and back. And at one point, we did not exist. At one point, humanity did not exist. At one point, the heavens and the earth did not exist. At one point, the arsh, the throne, did not exist. And at one point, Allah was there and there was no one else. And He wants you to basically catch that moment and hold on to it. Behold it and basically keep it along with you in your reflection. And if you do, then you will see no one, perceive no one but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then you will be able to get rid of the trials, mihan al-qusud, the trials in the way to your goals. Qusud is from qasd. The qasd is like maqsood. It is the objective, that which is intended, your goals. Those are al-qusud. Mihan is the plural of mihna, which is trial. So mihan al-qusud, the trials of the goals, meaning the trials in the way to your goals. And those trials in the way to your goals, if you truly behold the primacy and the eternity without beginning of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the azaliyya of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, everything will be easier for you. Because Allah will be your ultimate objective, and those things will vanish. Those very trials will vanish from your perception. You know that they exist, and you know that we are real creations of the real Creator. But still, that vision, the going back in time all the way to not the time, but before time itself, when there was only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, will help those trials vanish from your perception, because now you will behold Allah, and anything in your way to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will just disappear, because at one point it did not exist. its existence is contingent upon the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so it will be like nothing in your way to Him. And then he says, وَتَكَالِيفِ الْحِمَايَات, the unease of defensiveness. Takalif is basically takalluf, takalif, it is the burden. Taklif al-shar'i, it is the different burdens, different requirements of the Sharia. These are the takalif al-shar'iyya. So takalif would be requirements, burdens, translated here as unease of defensiveness. Himayat is the plural of himaya. Himaya is protection. Himayat would be basically, it means at the end of the day, defensiveness, being defensive, being all the time afraid of the next attack, afraid of the next assault, afraid of the next calamity. So you're always fighting off things. You feel like you have to watch out for yourself. And sometimes people drown in these mega conspiracy theories, and they think that and sometimes people start to become paranoid. Whether they become paranoid at a clinical level or a subclinical level, there are so many people in our community who are paranoid at the subclinical level. You know, that whole being consumed in conspiracy theories all the time and missing out on missing the obvious. The obvious things are obvious. You know, so like trying to figure out all of the conspiracies that made our ummah where it is. No, our ummah is where it is because of certain obvious things that our ummah. And once we address the obvious, then you could basically entertain all of the conspiracies in your mind. But let us first address the obvious. Let's first work on the obvious. You know. Are you able to wake up early every day and go, and do your salah on time and do your azkar, and then go to work and perform well at work without, making shortcuts, without cheating, without, any misconduct or sub-ethical even conduct at work, and then you're coming back and then you're taking care of your kids. And if you're not able to do this and to live up to what is expected of you, and to live up to your full potential, in taking care of yourself, doing what is right, being ethical, being good to your family, being good to your kids, being good to your community, working for the cause of justice for your community and for all communities, and so on and so forth. Then here is the work that you need to be doing. Don't worry about the mega conspiracy theories for now, or the cosmic conspiracy theories, because you are failing at your individual level. So take care of that, and have trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah will watch out for the ummah. Allah will take care of this ummah. What you have to do is basically to do your part from your corner, from your end. Do your part. Don't be overwhelmed by the conspiracies, because from your end, particularly, and this happens to a lot of people, from your end, what is it that you can do, you yourself? So even if there is like a huge conspiracy theory, even if Bitcoins is a huge conspiracy, but what is it that you can do, like you, Muhsin, or Ali, or what can you do? If it is actually, in fact, a conspiracy, or whatever, is a conspiracy, what is it that you can do yourself? And if you can't fight it off, trust Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Put your trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then, in this case, you will get rid of takalif al-himayat, the unease of defensiveness, and you will only focus on what you can do, and the means that you can take, and precautions and provisions and so on. Getting rid of takalif al-himayat is extremely important for your inner peace. That is not for your inner coma. That is not for your inner intoxication. We are alert, we are aware of our surroundings, but we address that which we can handle, which we can manage. and we do not get overwhelmed by that which is beyond our control. And we address also the obvious before we address the subtle. Why do you have to address the subtle before you address the obvious? First, address that which is obvious. And for anyone who does not know why our ummah is where it is now, you actually need to go and live for 4 years in a Muslim country. You'll be able to figure out what is wrong. And you'll be able to figure out that this is really not Islam at all. Islam is not really functional at all. Not at all, I'm sorry. I should not say this. There will be always goodness in this ummah. But Islam, particularly in the public space, particularly in ethics, work ethics, also social interactions, to a great extent also in social interactions, you will find that Islam is being neglected to a great extent. And that is, and also not just Islam, but common sense is being neglected. Propriety is being neglected in every regard. But if you go there and just study for 4 years, you have not gone there. You have to work. You have to basically be part of the society, not just like the student who, you meet people in the street, they like you because you came here from America to study Islam, they treat you well, they give you like a banana on your way to your class and stuff like that. Then addressing the obvious is important, and addressing what you can handle from your end is important. That will cure you from a lot of anxiety about a lot of conspiracy theories, which does not mean that conspiracies are not true. We know that the history of this world was about conspiracies, but that is not to deny the existence of conspiracies. But we're talking about what is it that I can do, regarding this. Then the last point that the Sheikh brought up here is al-Ta'rij ala Madaarij Al-Wasaa'il, counting on Madaarij Al-Wasaa'il, the elevating means. Wasa'il would be the means. Ta'rij ala al-Wasaa'il, basically counting on the means. Madaarij Al-Wasaa'il, Madaraj is the stairway. Madaarij means the stairways. Stairways of al-Wasaa'il means here the elevating means, the means that will elevate you upwards. So he's saying that you're not counting on the means. You're counting on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because going back before time, nothing existed. Those means did not exist. Their reality is contingent upon His creation of them. Therefore, count on Him. He is the true one in the true essence of the word truth. He is al-Haq. And all of these things around you are contingent creations. And all of these contingencies, you should not pay attention to them. They should not obstruct your vision. They should not distract your vision from focusing on Allah, counting on Allah, relying on Allah. All of the means, all of the work that you do, all of the hasanat, everything, if you count on them to be elevated, then you're counting on your work. Once you're counting on your work, you will be disappointed. But count on the grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, count on His graciousness, count on His mercy, and that while doing your best and while increasing your hasanat, earning more and more hasanat, and showing more and more obedience to Him, but count on Him because your hasanat, once you start to look at them and sort of admire them and count on them, they may destroy you. That admiration and that reliance on your hasanat could very easily destroy you completely. قل قولي هذا استغفر الله لي ولكم سبحانك وبحمدك اشهد ان لا اله الا انت استغفرك واتوب اليك.